Awesome. Go.
All right, here we go. Day this review with me once again, my wonderful friend Michelle Freeman. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Eva. So great to be here. Hello, everyone.
Good. And I see we've got 23 people tuned in. So if you are on
$7, you can make as many videos as you want. And
Sorry.
That's okay. So if you are on live, please do send a message in the chat, say hello to each other, get to know each other, and also hit the like button, because that's always going to be exciting for Andy to see afterwards. We have week 4. I actually have a hard stop at 6 p.m. my time, so we've got 58 minutes. So I'd say, shall we get cracking?
Absolutely.
All right, so let's do that. I'm going to start once again with the data.world page just to get everyone on the same page, because there might still be people here who've never done Viz Review before, and I want to make sure everyone understands how it works. You are going to get feedback from Michelle and me during this hour on your Viz, if you've submitted with the hashtag MMVizReview, and also if you've made it into my collection. Now, the collection is not based on any kind of favoritism or anything. It's a mix of random selection with trying to create a collection that contains as many different Vizes as possible, so we can see the different chart types, the different approaches, and give you feedback on those. So if you have created a bar chart and yours is not featured but someone else created a bar chart, please listen to the feedback we give them, because it probably helps you improve your Viz as well. Let's have a look at this week's data set. It's about coal mines in India, and I'll admit I have not managed to find the time to make my own Viz yet, but there was quite a lengthy report that it contained this one specific visualization, and I have been told by Andy that quite a lot of people have actually done a great job in using the specific citation that you're required to include. So when you publish your Viz, or when you improve it and you forgot to include this, please make sure that you just copy and paste the text that you see on data.world that I'm highlighting now, put that at the bottom of your Viz, and that's going to be great. So let's head over to our Twitter collection, and I think we're going to start at the bottom. I hope I don't mess up your system, Michelle.
We're all good.
Okay.
I'll go with like the first few so that we're synced up.
Yes, excellent. So we're going to start with Kevin Wee, and these are going to be not in chronological order. This time I made it just randomly, and let's check out what he created. Oh, and good to see so many people on the chat. Kevin Wee is there, Sarah Pallet, Christoph Bienik, Vanny, Kian, Brittany, Sophie, Ivan, Kultum, and Christos. Great to have you all with us. Okay, so let me bring this into full screen. And as I said, I haven't created my own Viz. So, Michelle, I think you did already. Did you do yours, right?
I did. I try and get them done on Sundays because I often don't have time during the week.
Yeah. Well, I guess the benefit for me is that I'm like your uninitiated audience. I'm literally seeing these things for the first time. I have no preconceived ideas of the data, and I can give you a pretty honest feedback on, is it easy to understand for someone who doesn't know about the topic. So shall we start? And I'm actually going to let you start, Michelle, because you do know the data, while I do take this all in.
So there were a lot of different ways that we could sort of tackle this. I have to say, I'm not really sure. I think it looks really interesting, but I'm not really sure what all the different charts are supposed to mean. The little lines and then the scatter plot. So I like how he's underlined the categories so you know what your legend is. And I like how it's broken up into sort of the districts based on density. I think that's a really interesting way to look at it. I'm just struggling to understand or to take away meaning from it, I guess.
Yeah, I've just had a brief look at the text. I think what would be helpful. So I think I understand the approach, looking basically at, I'll just call them small, medium, and large mines, based on their production capacity, right? Oh, coal density. What's coal density? I think, is it? Okay, mines in district. Oh, so is that the availability of coal in the district?
I think millions of tons of coal per
Be-
mine.
because if it's millions of tons of, oh, okay, so I guess it's how much is available, or is it also the efficiency? I'm not sure. I mean, I kind of just thought in terms of size, but maybe you could actually name these, like highly dense or very dense mines, medium and small, low density, just to indicate these are the ways you've categorized it. Because if you start straight away with over 1 to 4 and below 1 million, people might not understand why are those numbers relevant. Maybe that's how Tableau clustered them automatically. But I think I would start with giving people, hey, these are the 3 groups, and this is why I've grouped them that way. Because to me, that's not really clear. I don't understand the significance of those groups, and I don't understand those like kind of Gantt bars or whatever they are at the top and the side. I do understand the scatter plot from looking at it. So we've got our, how many mines there are, and then what's their production. But then
it took me a while to figure out the little lines, the Gantt. They tie to the axes. So similar to when you have a heat map with a marginal histogram, sort of that kind of concept, I think. But I definitely didn't get that until just.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential here because there's so much information in a fairly small space, but it just needs to be explained more so people can make sense of it. And at the bottom, I mean, I don't think I've ever been a fan of peg bubbles because they're just often quite useless to be quite. And I'm saying with the best intentions, because what does each bubble actually mean? It's like, okay, so this is a mine, but how can I compare the mines within a region? Is that the purpose, or are these mines across all the regions, but we're just looking at high coal density? And what does high coal density mean? Does it mean they're the most efficient or most productive because in the same amount of space they have more coal than others, which is probably just I guess nature, right? So plus on the right side we have all these other peg bubbles, but it's much smaller. So to me it's like, yeah, I just don't really think that peg bubbles are a good way to communicate things that we want to compare.
I would agree with that. And on the sort of smaller level, I don't think the axes or the zero lines are needed in the chart. Mm-hmm. So just from a ink on a page perspective, I would get rid of those.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to a viz by, Christoph. He's also online. Let's check what he has created. All right. So his viz looks completely different, right? My first impression is I love the simplicity because compared to the first one, I felt a bit overwhelmed with the first one because there were so many things to figure out. This one is like, okay, there are big numbers with titles. There's a bit of explanation that already assures me that I'm going to figure out what this is about. And then I have this scatter plot, so number of coal mines and production. What do you think of the design and the approach here, Michelle?
So similar, I really like the simplicity. There's nice hover over viz and tooltips to get a little more context and detail. I find the color contrast a little challenging. I think probably having more a darker color for the other districts, it really fades into the background color. And though I am a huge fan of giving things space to breathe, I think it probably could be a little narrower.
Yeah.
Really like the font.
The font is really nice, yeah. I think just the cleanness of this whole thing is really, really outstanding.
Absolutely.
I think the color choices in this and the previous one I really like because they're subtle, they are distinct from one another, and I think here there's kind of like burgundy or whatever the color you would call it, I think could be a bit brighter just to stand out more. Like, I think it's fine on the left, but in the chart itself, because they're so far away, the dots, I think it's not that pronounced, the difference. But I really like the color choices here as well.
Yep, and I like how it's been grouped by color into high number of mines per district. So again, sort of looking at the data and scoping it down into a manageable category.
Okay, well, I hope that's helpful for Christoph. I think the bands could maybe be even bigger because and the titles should be centered above them. They're a bit kind of off to at least the one on the number of coal mines. What I'd also find interesting is why is the number of coal mines relevant? Like 459 to me is interesting. It sounds like a lot, but what do you compare it to? Is there, and this data is probably not available, but could you compare it to another country that has maybe the same land mass and a lot fewer or a lot more coal mines? And that could literally just be a Wikipedia search to, you don't need to find data as such in a spreadsheet. It could just be, hey, I'm comparing how many coal mines there are in India versus Alaska, or God knows what, right? But just comparing things that are maybe comparable on I wouldn't do population because coal and population doesn't really, connect, but if it is landmass or something in the same region or something at the same latitude or whatever you want to choose. So I think if you have big ass numbers, it's good if they have some sort of so what that they answer. I think the production MT, I would explain MT somewhere that it's megatons because people might not know. And here again, it could be interesting to say, like, what do they actually consume? Do they consume all of this themselves? Do they? I don't know. And how much maybe are they producing through coal versus solar energy or something? I always think some sort of benchmark would be helpful or a comparison when you have these numbers.
Agreed. And maybe it's just as simple as the relationship between the number of mines and how much they produce.
Yeah. Because that could be actually something that you find quite easily online is what's the average production per coal mine across the world? So where does it rank kind of thing?
Right.
Okay. And then we have Natasha Stevenson. I don't know if I've had Natasha before in this review.
I don't recall.
Okay, we've had a few more people join. And we have Marion also on this review. She's watching today. And next week, so for the month of February, she'll be co-hosting it with me. So everyone can say hi to Marion and, get familiar. She's an awesome person.
Hello, Marion. Yes, she's going to be amazing.
Mm-hmm. Let's have a look at Natasha's viz. And the first thing that stands out to me is the color. And I love it. It's like a bright pop of color.
So I love the bright pop of color. I guess I always struggle when the color seems to have nothing to do with what the topic is, although it is a fun color. And I do find the purple and the blue a little too close to each other.
Yeah.
In the dots. Also not...
They're hard to see.
They are. What do you think of the choice of the barbell chart for comparing the number of mines versus coal production?
I don't love it simply because it looks like some sort of comparison over time. So it looks like we're looking at chronological data. They started on the left and then they moved to they started at the grey dot and moved to the blue dot. We're looking at two different metrics here, and that's very unclear. And I don't think it's actually a good idea at all to show it like this. I think a scatter plot is fine. A ratio could be fine as well. You could have for each of them a ratio that says whatever. I mean, you can have it as a decimal number so that you could maybe color, like have it like a heat map. In which state, how many in which state, what's the production compared to the mines? There could be a heat map, but I don't think this is really a reasonable way to do it. I think if you had number of mines in 1900 versus 2000, perfectly fine, or coal production over time, but not comparing two metrics at a point in time. So I like what you said about the colors being too close together, especially because we're looking at okay, every color is dark, you know, or very intense. We've got like a really deep blue, dark gray, and a really like bright, intense purple. So when you look at color schemes in Tableau, that's what I always recommend. If you're not sure how to use color, check out their color palettes, because you'll see that you get dark blue, I think like dark blue, dark orange, light orange. There's always a contrast in light and dark, because that way the colors are more distinct from one another. So what I'd recommend here is you could have change the chart, but if you want to keep some sort of, circles in there, maybe it could even be a white circle with an outline that marks the start and the end. But the colors are just too close to each other. I think the mat is fine in terms of color, but the chart on the left, it is really hard to see.
Right. And if you wanted to have a pop of color, because I do love using vivid colors, you could pull into something maybe from the Indian flag, or if there's, colors that are often associated, and that is not my area of expertise.
Yeah, I think this topic, you don't have to use coal kind of topics, but if you use, coal kind of colors, but if you use colors, they shouldn't be so far from the topic that people are like, oh, why are they using this color? If it's like green and yellow, I'd be like, it has nothing to do with coal production, because we always think of, smog and pollution when it comes to coal, or at least just black and dark gray. You could make this very easily a monochromatic color scheme where you just have shades of gray and black and maybe white. So I think the first impression, the viz looks super clean. The chart doesn't work for me. It's just a type of chart that doesn't work with this data. I don't mind the map. What I'd consider is actually making the circles white with a gray outline, because they are all overlapping, and if you make them white and maybe a bit transparent, I think they will pop more, especially on those dark states.
Yeah, I agree. I was going to mention about it's hard to see the dots, and I really like having the specific locations layered on top of the states. The other thing is updating the tooltips.
Oh, yes, tooltip updating is always something I forget as well. It's like, I'm almost publishing, but there's the tooltip. So it's good to just clean up the formatting a bit, helps.
Absolutely. I've had to go back more times than I'd like to.
Me too. Actually, I have another suggestion. So your font is really, really clean. I think, is it Avenir? I'm not sure. I would update the font in the chart itself to be the same nice light font, because it just looks a bit heavy compared to it and a bit blurry, and that could be good as well. Okay, let's move on to the next viz, and I did want to call out that in the chat people have said it's actually metric tons, not megatons. So thank you for the correction. As I said, I haven't looked at the data yet, so I don't even know. But yeah, make sure to check what the definition is. I think it's really helpful to do that and include just a description. Okay, Sarah Carr is next.
Very excited to have Sarah joining in Viz Review. So Sarah and I met through the Mentor Exchange program together. So it's great to see her here.
Nice, very good. So I included her Viz because, again, it's a very different approach with this unit chart. I find that very interesting. And this is, again, something where I'm going to say something about color, but I wanted to let you go first, Michelle.
So I really like the look of unit charts, and I like how, similar to what we've said before, I think the colors could match the topic a little bit better. I think the biggest struggle I have with this is that it's getting squished a bit, so it runs off on my screen. And I end up with the longer categories with some little dots. So I think if you're going to use this type of chart, making sure that it all fits together. I think it'd be really nice if there was some interactivity between the bottom chart and the top.
Good point. I downloaded it and I'm opening it, and it's taking a little while, but I thought maybe this one is where we could have a quick live demo and see what we can change. I like doing those because they're fun, but also just to show people how much you can achieve with just a very small change. So.
Oh, and I just
Yep.
realized that you can change the category from material to ownership and type of mining. I think that's really nice.
Yeah.
Having that interactivity.
Absolutely. Let me just make that a bit smaller so I don't have that box covering things. It just.
I will say what was drilled into me, and if you go back to my earliest, I think it was my very first Makeover Monday, was red and green all over. And I remember you and Andy reminding us that that is not accessible to people
absolutely. Okay.
So just being careful about using those together and other colors.
I'm going to just chuck in a container here because I love containers and they make your life so much easier if you can actually get them to work. They're very fiddly, so let's try again.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm totally team container and team tile, but for the life of me, I cannot figure out why it is so darn hard to drop things on them.
Yes. That's why when I create a dashboard, I always start with show dashboard title because it automatically creates containers. Oh dear. Okay. I use the trick that I learned from Andy, which is to put all my comments in the caption. Okay, so this thing.
Oh, that's a great idea.
So what we could do is we could put a little horizontal container in the middle. I don't know why they have those weird sizes that they have, but it doesn't matter. Okay, so that automatically went in there. Let's also remove the floating from there. Okay. And let's create a text field, because then we can get rid of this title, and then things don't jump around in a way that you don't want them to.
Another thing on maps that I usually try and do is, unless there is a reason you want people to be able to zoom in and out, I fix them. So that.
Oh, it seems to be already fixed. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to make this, so I've got a fairly large screen. I'm going to make this even taller because the map is quite small. And I'm going to try, you know what I don't like? That I can't say I want to zoom in just a little bit more. Oh, I can with my mouse wheel. Learn something new. Okay. Now the other thing is that I wonder, so if this, okay, so the type only applies to the bottom chart. Now what I wanted to change here is actually the colors, because they're all really bright. They're all in the same kind of level of contrast. So I would suggest let's change it to something a bit different. What do I have? Oh, I have a bunch of things, but I don't know how many of them actually. Oh, what is that? No, that's not great. Let's go back to our, really nice Tableau kind of things. Open cast could be dark grey, or maybe underground is dark grey. Open cast is maybe something a bit more on that side, and maybe we have.
Did you build all of those palettes?
I did. Well, no, some I copied from Andy. I'm just going to pick some random colors, see how this looks. Ooh, that's terrible. Let me change open cast to a blue. I don't love it. Let's see how we go. So the chart at the bottom I think should be a bit taller. And if you make your viz bigger than one screen, I would always recommend make it tall rather than wide, because people are used to scrolling downwards. They're not used to scrolling kind of to the side.
So because there's so much empty space next to the map, there's possibly you could do them side by side.
Yeah,
and make that. And then you could have those rows be taller so that they would wrap around.
All right, and then this thing, we're going to do another horizontal container because Eva loves containers. And let's pop And then we can use our other horizontal container that we created earlier and put it in there. And then we are going to move it like this. Oh, I hate when that happens. You have to move it just ever so slightly, not to where the arrow goes, because it breaks otherwise. Okay, and then this can be hidden. This can be as big as it wants to be. I don't love it. I don't think we need that. I don't think we need that. This is not going so great. Let's see what happens. Okay, that's better. Type. Okay. You know, not perfect, but you could, yeah, Michelle, I really like that suggestion. You could lay it out this way, and this could be entire view. Maybe I will take these and actually get rid of the caption here and put them under the map, because there's quite a lot of space. So the caption by default explains what the data shows, but you might want to, you know, edit that to change it. Now, again, I'm actually going to make this shorter again, because now it looks a bit ridiculous being so tall. And okay, so the colors, you know, they need to work, but I don't want to spend so much time on colors. What I would recommend here is where we have the dots, to make that color just a little bit transparent. Maybe you could make them white, and you can give them, why can't they have a border? Oh, okay. I want them to have a border so that you can see them. And maybe instead of using red, which doesn't really make me think of coal mines, we could just use like a really dark grey. I don't want it to be black. I also want to see, okay, let's see what that does. And also on the map, I might also work with white borders of these states. Oh, maybe not, maybe we'll keep them dark. But on the map, I do want to do some formatting. Where's my map? Here we go. Map layers. I don't know if we'll need the base. I always like using the coastline because it makes a really nice sharp outline. Land cover, we probably don't need. I want to province borders and all that. That's probably quite helpful. And maybe a bit of washout. So let's see what that looks like. I like that it's not red anymore, because I feel the color's a bit better now, just because we have the other colors on the side, and you can obviously change those. I do want to make this darker though. Apply. Okay, and what you could do is add the names to the labels. So that way we could get rid of them in the back, and then it just looks a bit cleaner. Names, and get rid of these names. I don't know, but you know, something to experiment with. I mean, the background names are a bit nicer in formatting than the other ones, but you could custom format them. Okay, I'm gonna stop here before I take up all this time. But hopefully you can see the colors are a bit easier to digest. What I would also say actually here, what I did want to change, is I want to sort these individual mines by the type of mine. Because otherwise the colors are all really mixed up. Where do we have type of mine? Oh, can I not do that? That's really annoying. Okay, there's some other sorting in there. I'm not going to break it now, but I would try to just kind of lump them together. It might look fun to have them all mixed in between, but that way you could actually try and do some comparisons. Okay, I think I've exhausted this viz and myself. Let's move on. Next up we have Rebecca Gawley, and she would love some feedback. And Michelle, this is over to you because I've talked a lot now, and I'm going to look through the chat and see if there's any questions I need to answer. Let me make
So this is really nice and simple and clean, and I love the focus on that there is an impact to getting rid of coal, so that while it's a valuable thing, there are other aspects to it that have to be mitigated. That there's a workforce that has jobs, and one of the things that I looked at was the fact that the government actually owns most of the mines. I like the arrow, the lines pointing to the regions. I think they could be a little bit slighter or smaller. And it took me a minute. The note to click on a state name for more details. I initially actually clicked on the map and I'm like, why is that not working? And this time I did it right. So, and it is obvious that it's there. I just made that mistake. So I like having a little more details show up. You can actually have that if it's in a collapsible container where the height isn't fixed. You could have that disappear and reappear so that you don't end up with just a gray box there. I'm not explaining that well. I like the simple colors. I like the font.
Yeah. No, it's good. I find that grey box weird, whereas I click on the state name. It's because it's empty, and I'm just like, what's missing here? So plus, if somebody just looks at the image, right, they won't get any information in there.
Right, and now that I think about it more, I don't even know that the gray box is needed. Like, you could still have the text pop up, but it might be more intuitive if, like, under the top 3 coal producing states, there was a line, the click on a state name for more details was underneath that, maybe in italics.
Yeah,
I think that would make it more obvious.
I think, people, it's a really good idea to remember that most people struggle to read instructions. I mean, it's very obvious sometimes in this project that people struggle to read instructions. So when you then publish something that you want people to interact with, you have to make it super obvious where they have to click, because a lot of them are not familiar with interactive visualization. So make it as easy as possible for them to interact with your work if that's what you want them to do. And I think, it's fine. Like, the wording is no problem at all. Just like put like a massive arrow there, not massive, but reasonably sized arrow there, and just encourage people to be like, hey, this is where you need to click, or this is what I want you to do. And then it's really good if they get something good out of it, like, oh, this is really useful information. Otherwise, they might feel like, oh, that wasn't really worth it. So, yeah.
I'm also finding the white space above the chart. Like, I'm sort of wondering why the text is why there are returns there as opposed to going across the page. I guess it's throwing me off a little.
Yeah, so just something to consider, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move into Dara's viz, and there was a comment in the let me bring it up, in the chat from Musumi, and it says, no, you don't have to submit quickly. It says, please review my viz, but I don't see a viz with your name submitted to Viz Review, so you have to include the right hashtag. And it is just a random collection, and I don't know how many times I need to say that, but this is a free project, and there is no SLAs. Like, we can't guarantee that you get reviewed, but you can take our feedback that we give others. If that's not good enough, then I'm sorry, you've got to take it or leave it. Okay, let's check out this viz. What do you think of the rotated place names? I always struggle with those.
So it makes it harder to read. I'm also not sure why they're going down. I think it could just be a nice bar chart. Like,
like horizontal?
Yeah. Again, the colors aren't really related. And I think there's an image behind the title. It's just sort of hard to see it. I actually think the font would be really nice if it was just on its own.
Yeah. I agree. I think the font, if it was just colored black or something, I don't really understand the pink or the coral color on this, because I think it could really pop if it was a dark gray background, but I don't understand the choice of color for the topic.
Agreed. I don't love the
you
halos.
Yeah, because I mean, you don't have to change it. It's just my reaction that purple to me doesn't really sound or seem like a coal kind of color. Now, if it's purple on the dark background, that really helps it pop. So then I would be like, yeah, totally fine. And I don't want to say everyone should do like a black and white kind of viz. I just could put that for consideration.
Yeah, I like the sizing and the location of all the elements, just the orientation of the chart. Good context and detail without being too much text to read through.
Yeah. So, and Sumi, I did find your viz, but you didn't include the hashtag for viz review. So if you don't do that, we don't consider it for review, because we want to make this an opt-in process. So we want to make sure that the only people we pull up here on the screen are those who submitted, because everyone else, basically, I mean, we're putting your viz up for critique, and we don't want to critique people who didn't ask for it. So please make sure that you put hashtag #MMVizReview in your tweet, otherwise you just don't feature in this, because that's all I only look at the hashtag when it comes to putting together the collection. So all the information is on our website, just read it.
Yeah, really nice formatted tooltips. The only thing, turning off the check boxes for the option boxes. I forget what they're called.
Oh, the controls for the map? Or
yeah, the controls.
Tooltips? Yeah.
The tooltips controls. Also, just a little note, instructing people, if you select on one of the bars, it will filter down and show you just that, so that people know there's that interactivity, because the interactivity is nice.
Yeah, I mean, generally, I guess my approach is always with Makeover Monday, I design for an unknown audience, so you have to tell them what is going to happen if they click on something, because they might genuinely not know and not expect it. Shall we have a look at vanis viz, the dominant fuel of India?
Yes.
Okay, so there was a question, how do you rotate the axis label? You literally right click and it says rotate label, and that's all you have to do. And Sumi, no worries, I know I figured you knew, I hadn't come across your name before, so yeah, just follow those instructions and there you go. Okay, so vanis viz, I have to make that a bit smaller because it's in itself quite large. Okay. Off you go. I'm curious to know what you have to say.
I'm not really sure what the radial chart's supposed to mean.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I used images in my viz, so I shouldn't critique it. But the coal, I think they're little coal baskets.
I think so, yeah.
I think I'm not really sure. They're not really working that much for me. I'm also not really sure why they're all labeled coal. Oh, it's coal lignite. I'm sorry. Okay, so noting the difference between coal and lignite. Which I did actually Google to understand the difference. So maybe explaining what the difference is.
So
we've called it out.
What I suggest is, to me, the viz looks like it's a viz of the world, because it's this like globe shape and there's a map. But we're just talking about India, so I wouldn't do it like this, because I think it's misleading. It makes me, like, my first expectation is, oh, I hear about something about the world because we have this circle, but then it's just India. So I don't understand the radial bar chart. I think it's absolutely not necessary to make it radial. I know people do these things to make it like more captivating for our attention, but my recommendation is to use data viz to make it as easy as possible to understand this data. And I think here it's actually harder to understand the data. First of all, we have a map with just these little icons that are hard to kind of grasp. The font that explains things at the top and the bottom is really, really small. I would make that, like, break it up a bit, the text into separate blocks, not make it yellow. It's really hard on the eyes, yellow on black. And then, the bar chart, like, why should I go through the effort of hovering over everything to get information? I think these are all the different coal mines rather than the different regions or something. So why is it so hard? Why can I not, for example, have, I don't know, a bar chart of the top 10 per region, and then I can click, or per state, I can click on a state and I see the top 10 for that state, and I have names and I have production capacity. Like, this makes it really hard for me. I would never go through the effort of hovering over everything. Call me lazy, but also it's just also very difficult because these bars are partly like really close together. So I have to like hover and then I have to read all this stuff. And it's like, what's the value of me knowing that? If you want to educate me about coal mining in India, I'd like to have it like nice and simple, very basic information first. And then I kind of dig into it a bit more. It's like, okay, so overall there are so many mines and there's this much production capacity. And do you want to know what different types of coal there is, or whatever these things are called? And do you want to know how much there is in different states? Then click here. And then I'm like exploring. So I think this grabs my attention, but it very easily loses me because I have to put so much work in understanding it.
Agreed. I would also put either hard returns in the text at the top so that it aligns, instead of having the first part of it be so wide and then just a few words wrapping over.
Yeah. I think making it larger, and I'm a fan of putting like 2 blocks of text next to each other, or even 3, kind of like a newspaper does, because it is easier to digest when you look at it.
Right. It also doesn't include the requested attribution.
Yes, the quotation or the citation and your name at the bottom as well. Okay, let's jump to Isha, and it's her first attempt at Makeover Monday. So well done also on being brave to submit to Viz Review. I mean, Michelle, you're the only one out of the 2 of us who actually has received this feedback before, because I always talk, I don't get the feedback myself. I do imagine that it can be a bit hard to take because we're quite blunt.
It definitely took a little getting used to at first, but I really came to treasure it. I kind of miss it now because I don't have the opportunity to get that clear and direct feedback. So I hope I'm not hurting anybody's feelings. It was what really worked and was meaningful for me. And I'm always happy to follow up if anybody ever has any questions. I really like this map.
Nice of you to offer. And I have to say, I do want to say, the reason why we're blunt is because it takes so many more words to be super nice and super careful. And, I try to be diplomatic, but we also want to cover quite a few vizzes. So we give you the feedback. It's never personal. It's about your viz. So please don't, if the feedback is kind of negative or you feel it's negative, it's just to help you get better. Like, that's all I want. I'm not your boss. I don't pay your salary or something. So you don't even have to implement it, but it's just meant to help you get better, because we love when people see, like, when you share your improvements, we're like, oh yes, it worked. And a lot of the time when people take this feedback on board, they actually make it even better than what I imagined or what we imagined, right?
Yeah, and I leave out all of my iterations, like going back to the beginning of time. So if you ever want to see where I started, or like, there are some really bad things out there, but I love seeing the progression of my work. So I highly recommend both iterating and leaving both your old and your new version out there.
Absolutely. So let's have a look at Isha's viz, and what do you think of this black background? We haven't seen many dark ones yet.
I love it, but I'm partial to it partly because I did the exact same thing. So I'm biased.
Yeah. I think the dark background works. What I would suggest is to remove the land cover, which is these kind of different shaded gray areas, because if you just have a consistently dark gray background, I think that's going to be easier to look at, because these gray areas where there's, I guess, mountains and stuff, it just makes it more busy. And because the countries at the top that are kind of, like where with Nepal and China, maybe make that box even less transparent, because those countries don't have data in them and we don't need to see those. And then the font, I mean, maybe I'm getting old, but I like font that's a bit larger and easier to read. I'd make that bigger and maybe break it up, like you have, or, even like horizontally.
Yeah, I can't read it at all, both the color contrast and, the size of the font. I would also not stretch it out all the way to the edges, have a little breathing room on the inside.
I don't fully understand what the colors mean, because we have blue for I don't know what. So this is 45 metric tons, but it doesn't say what the place is. And then it says highest coal producing mine, but which one is it? Is it, because we have Korba and we have Jivra, they're both written in blue, but I don't know what it relates to because there's only one blue circle. And I don't know what the yellow font relates to because everything else is pink. So reduce the colors, maybe just use pink. And then if you have your callouts, draw a line to the dot that it refers to.
Yeah, I agree with that. I will say I really like how the colors pop. I just wish I understood the meaning behind them.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so there was someone else who said, so Naman, I'm new here. How does this review work? Do we get a common topic on which we build this? Yeah, I would suggest before jumping into the review to actually read makeovermonday.co.uk and figure out how Makeover Monday works, because without that, you're not going to have much fun in this review. I also recommend, just as a general recommendation, don't include hashtags that you don't know what they're for. Like, I know people like to include the Viz5 hashtag kind of randomly. Viz5 is only for specific Viz5 datasets. And, like we include it for those datasets, but otherwise you don't need to use them because you kind of just mess up their data collection. And, this review kind of, you're welcome to just watch even if you're not submitting and see how this works. But I recommend going to makeovermonday.co.uk and having a look. There's a video that explains everything. Okay. I'm sorry, just checking the time. Okay, we've got 10 minutes left. We have Yash, production of coal in India. And I don't know what government, semi-government, and private means. Oh, these are the people, the organizations that hold control the mines?
Yes, although I don't think it's semi-government, although maybe I misunderstood.
Maybe it's like private-public sector partnerships or something?
I think it's state government. At least that was how I read into it.
Okay.
And I could be mistaken, but then I'll have to go iterate.
Yeah. And then we have the state. So I like the big numbers. Some of them I'm not 100% clear on. So I would say states. Does it mean coal-producing states? And does it mean there are only 9 that produce coal? Could well be. I'm just asking the question. So I'd make that a bit clearer. Okay, then number of coal mines, quantity, again, MT should be defined somewhere, that it's metric tons. And then the ones on the left are unclear to me. They do add up to the 440 coal mines, but it could be just like, who controls the mines or something as a title, and then you can see at the bottom. The Viz and tooltips, I don't know. I'm never a fan of them because they make it like I always get a bit of a fright of, what's going on when I hover, because I expect something simple, and I don't know if it's that necessary. But what you could do is actually, maybe when you click, the Viz pops up as a floating element or something. Because I think there's valuable information in there. I just don't know if it needs to be a Viz, which kind of makes everything very busy.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not clear why the 83% is formatted differently than the other numbers. I think it would look better if it was the same.
Yeah.
And I find the 63% note at the top a little hard to read. Might be better if that was maybe called out in text
And the 63 could be a nice large number on the left side of that box and then have the text on the right side. I just want to jump in because I had another, so Kimberly Fidel, who does great work, hi Kimberly, she said MT is millions of tons, which actually now looking at it makes a lot of sense, because if we only had 732 metric tons, that would not be a lot in terms of quantity, because a metric ton is, you know, not that much when you have to supply the entire country of India. So please double check how you define it. Double check the source article. Again, I haven't looked at it yet, but make sure you use the right definition. Question for you, Michelle, on the tree map here. What do you think of it? Would you use percentage in this case?
I do like percentage for the total coal. I'm assuming it's the total coal output.
And that's my question, is what is the percentage? What does it mean? I think that needs to be explained. Like, it could be just a small title above it, or even a subtitle saying the tree map shows how much each state, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, these are 8.
I think it must be the states, because I think it's not.
But there are only 8.
No, there are only 8.
So
understanding what they are.
There's one small sliver on the right. So maybe just say, you know, it shows the percentage that each state contributes, just so that people know what the percentage actually relates to.
So because there's that tiny sliver that you can't see, I might annotate that, and like even if you just made it a little bit longer with the space underneath it, you could, and it doesn't have to be within the viz itself, it could be floating on top on your dashboard. Mm-hmm. So that people know that there's something there, because I had completely missed that.
Yeah, I think otherwise I like the design. I like how clean it is. I like that everything, aside from maybe the font size, but everything is really easy to read. Mm-hmm. No colors that clash, so I think that's really well done. And our feedback is helpful to make it just a bit, you know, different.
Yeah, and I really like the symmetry of having the at the top and on the left.
Let's check out the next one from Data is Beautiful. Now we only have an image, so I'm just going to click on that to make it large, because I was confused. This is a scatter plot on top of a map, but all the dots are in the ocean. So I'm like, at first I was like, why are the dots not on top of India? But I guess the map is just a background image. What do you think of this?
Yeah, no, I find it confusing as well. I think if you're going to use it as a background image, I would make it a lot lighter. Or maybe even, I guess it's not really working for me as a background image, so maybe have them side by side.
Yeah. It could also be, I mean, the ocean is not the worst place for it. It just needs to be laid out a bit differently, I think. So very clear that on the bottom left is this chart, and on the top right is the map. And I think I don't mind having, you know, climate change co-production and the big numbers overlaying the map a bit, but everything seems quite busy because we have all these different cities that are labeled in the map. It's cities, right? Because we've got Hyderabad and Pune and Mumbai, and then we also have, I think, the states named as well. So the map is just so busy, it's really distracting. And I'd love to just see, okay, what should I focus on? And if we have the state name with all these colors, which are a bit much, but why not color the states in that same color so that you can kind of connect it if they're not overlaid? And I think Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra have pretty much the same color, just a different symbol. So maybe considering that, but overall, I like that there's a few call outs, and stuff. So yeah. Okay, let's see what else we can cover in the next 4 minutes. I do want to pick up the one from, I don't know how to pronounce that name, Duigu? Hope I didn't butcher that, but this is a chart we haven't seen, and it's a dot plot. So let's bring up
the jitter, one of my favorites. I love jitters.
They do look cool. I hardly ever create them, but I do like when people make them.
So I actually have used them for work.
Oh, have you?
If you have a lot of data and you want to be able to see outliers, they're kind of nice.
Yeah. So I really like the image on the left because I think the layout here works really well, and the font is fine. What I would suggest is testing, moving all this text to the bottom half of the image where it's darker and a bit blurrier, so it's not so distracting, and pushing the title of the viz to the top left, so the top of that coal image, and get that red thing, because the red thing makes me think of a blood donation. I'm not sure what, I mean, maybe it's a logo, I don't know, but it really distracts from a viz that otherwise looks really cool in black and white.
Yeah, and if you move the title to the left at the top and made it white, then you could stretch the viz and make your dots a little bit bigger if you wanted.
Yeah.
Um,
I was going to just try to see what it looks like, but it's not downloadable. Yeah, like you say, you mean the dot, so the jitter, the dot plot, you could make larger? Yeah, I like that idea. Because then you can maybe even make the circles a bit larger.
yeah, and potentially make them slightly transparent. See how that looked? So that a lot of them are on top of each other. Some really nice tool tips here again.
Yeah, you could even try what they look like as white circles with a black outline, because then you would have the black stuff all kind of on the left and the white stuff on the right, but maybe just something to experiment with.
And I don't know what the color indicates, because some of these are colored differently. It's just super hard to tell.
Oh, yes, I couldn't even see that.
I know. I think I didn't notice it at first, and then I realized in the tooltips there's a color, but again, I don't know what it means.
Yeah. I'm afraid I have a meeting in a minute, so I'm just going to bring our faces back on the screen. So, just so we can say goodbye. Actually, let me do that properly. So, thanks everyone who participated, everyone who dialed in. We've got 54 people online right now, which is great. Hopefully the feedback was helpful. Thank you, Michelle, once again.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you everyone for your patience and your willingness to have me guest host.
Oh, I love it. I think it's a great way to get additional perspectives, and I like the idea of doing it for 1 month at a time, because otherwise you would have 52 different guest hosts, which I think just doesn't give enough consistency, and also would be just too much for me to handle, and I want to make sure I can handle it so we can keep it running as we do. So everyone, make something of the feedback, whatever that looks like for you. Feel free to share some comments on Twitter. I should post out this once it's all processed, once the recording is processed, and feel free to comment under that with your ideas, what you took away, what lessons you learned, what you're going to do, or any other comments you want to leave. And with that, enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.
Thanks, everyone.